With that said, we have introduced another topic. That is, when we are defining the acceptability of this information system, it's about the acceptable level of risk. There is a principle of security governance here. What is security governance? It is about determining my security functions based on my business strategy and goals. This may be different from the thinking logic of traditional technical people. Because I myself come from a technical background, it's easy to fall into a vicious cycle. We will use the latest and best equipment. But there is a problem here. When I choose the latest and best equipment, first, this equipment may have risks because the new technologies or some new products, they inherently have risks. Second, if I use the latest technology or the best equipment, I can't possibly use it for all my information systems. All businesses cannot have the latest and best equipment. There must be a sequence. That is what we call priority. I have to ensure that the core assets or core business systems are okay. So, the goal of the whole governance. In fact, if we need project management, we can also establish another way of thinking. That is priority. I need to prioritize my new systems. Then I put the best and optimal resources in the highest priority or the most risky place. In order to achieve my business guarantee goal, this is related to the development of the organization, right? As my organization grows in scale, as my industry leadership gets higher and higher, my priorities also need to be adjusted. Another thing, we will refer to some control frameworks. The so-called control framework is some, for example, like IBM or Amazon, these big companies. They may have a better understanding of the company's strategy and the industry. They are leading in this industry. So their understanding or judgment of the entire industry's risks. It is more accurate or more meaningful. We can refer to their architecture so that our senior management can pay moderate attention and have moderate intimacy. We will talk about these two words later. In fact, our senior management needs to care about compliance, including the operating status of our enterprise. Let's first clarify the first question. What is the acceptable range that we just talked about? As an information security manager, confirm that appropriate policies have been implemented, process standards and guidelines. Ensure that the business is used within an acceptable range. So, security managers, pay attention everyone. Here we usually refer to the CSO, that is our Chief Security Officer. This will be tested in the exam. In fact, the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Security Officer. His main role is to ensure that the business operates within an acceptable range. It's not that it can't be interrupted. It can be interrupted, but the time and cost of this interruption, it can be accepted by our senior management or business system if it's interrupted for a minute. If my business recovers, it's okay. There's no problem, right? But if it exceeds a certain threshold, the problem becomes serious. So as a CSO, in fact, he reduces the business to run within an acceptable range. Implementing this standard is okay. And there is a very important logic here. That is, we say information security. It's not just a technical operation. What's more, information security meets business needs. In the entire dual SP course, we must clarify that information security, it's not about revolving around an IT department or the work of IT. It's more about revolving around our business system, including our entire organization, the requirements of our industry or laws and regulations. It revolves around this logic. For example, many companies may do equal protection. When our information security meets the requirements of level protection, it's okay. It's not that I must have a certain technology or use a certain device, meet a certain technical standard. This logic is not established in itself. So, information security is to meet business needs. There is a problem here. What is the risk that our business can accept? You can take a look. So here mentions a risk curve. In fact, risk management. It is divided into two thresholds. One is the upper threshold. That is what we call the upper limit. One is the lower limit. In fact, every company or every industry, it will pursue some risks. First, we need to understand why there are risks. Because you do any industry for profit. Then if you make a profit, there may be some losses. So like the financial industry, its risk preference is relatively low. Banks, its risk preference is relatively low. It hopes that our main risk preference is high, but its own risk preference is relatively low. But if you are like the retail industry, its risk preference may be higher. because the value of its data or assets compared to the financial system, its value may be slightly lower, like the energy system. Its risk preference is also very low, because once there is a problem, for example, like the national grid, once the power is cut off, the social impact may be relatively large. It's not just about losing money. It may be for the country, national economy, people's livelihood. There will be a problem. So, different industries. Its risk preferences are not the same, but no matter what industry you are in, or what organization, its risk preference has a characteristic. It will have an upper and lower threshold. So, what is this lower threshold? Or what is the lower limit? What is the lower limit? It's called the critical value. That is to say, when this risk is reduced to a certain level, I can consider it negligible. That is, the loss of this risk. I think it's too small. I can ignore it. For ordinary people, just ignore it. This is the critical value. We call it the ignore value, or called the lower limit. So I just need to mention my risks. Then if this risk happens, it doesn't really affect the operation of my business or cause financial loss to my company. It won't cause any changes, or I can ignore it. Then this is the lower threshold or lower limit. Then what is the other one? It's the upper limit, because once a risk occurs, we will inevitably suffer losses. But this loss can be too big. If the loss is too big, and once a risk occurs, my business system might not be able to recover because I lost too much data. Or my financial loss is too high, my company goes bankrupt. This is the risk tolerance. That is to say, our risk should be greater than the critical value. If your risk is less than the critical value, then you almost don't accept any risks, because even the risks I can ignore, I don't accept. Then this company can hardly move. Why? It's easy to understand. I don't allow any money to be lost. Or my business is not allowed at all. The cost and price are too high because you invest a lot of equipment and energy and technical maintenance. But there is a problem here. My pursuit of risk can't be too high, because once my risk preference is greater than my risk tolerance. For example, we talk about stock trading. We use all our savings to trade stocks. Then once the stock has a big fluctuation or changes, then it's possible for ordinary people to lose everything. Then there is a problem. That is our risk preference. If it's greater than the risk tolerance, it's possible that once a risk occurs, we can't do anything to recover the business or to support our life and work stably. So, good risk management should be what? It should be within the risk tolerance. That is the upper limit of risk, and the critical value of risk. That is the lower limit of risk. In this place, we find the balance point. It depends on different industries and different company sizes. Once a risk occurs, it will cause some losses, but these losses are acceptable to me. So this is good risk management. Then the question comes again, what is this risk? It determines what our system security requirements are. Just now, we mentioned the issue of upper and lower limits. Here, we need to do risk assessment and risk management work. That is to say, our information security needs actually come from risk management and assessment. This is something everyone needs to understand. Many times our IT department, when reporting budgets, there will always be a bottleneck. Our senior management generally won't approve our budget because our investment in equipment is high. And as an IT department, it doesn't have any output. So it's more about cost input. Actually, we can look at this logic in reverse. The point where we help companies make profits. What is it? Actually, no accidents. Because our equipment or our technology doesn't directly create business value. We're not like producing a certain product or producing a certain part. I can sell directly. No. Then our IT, including our security department, the main thing we do is to keep our information system running stably. No accidents. So this no accident is actually what prevents risks. So when we report to senior management, what we should say is, then if this risk happens, what is the loss value it suffers? Actually, in reverse, it's the value created by our IT or our security department. It's the value I create by not having accidents. This is actually our value. Everyone needs to understand this logic. So, what is the risk to prevent? Obviously, it's the risk that determines the security needs. First of all, This is the first thing. This is also my biggest feeling from learning this course. Why are 8 people so tired? Everyone is busy every day. It might be this 996 or this 72 24th hours on call because IT people are really hardworking. Actually, it's to prevent accidents. You can think about it carefully. For example, like this spanning tree technology on the switch, like this hot backup technology on the router, or what? Cluster technology on the cloud, some high elasticity technologies. Actually, it solves a core problem, that is to prevent problems from happening. Once a problem occurs, I can use a certain technology to switch, or like routing, I can choose a new path. So many technologies are actually around risks. So, what is the risk? Actually, it's our security or business system, the security needs of information assets. This is the first thing. Then around the security needs, we will have corresponding strategies or technical implementations. This is the response to risk. In response to risk, in this place, we need to be clear about a principle. It has both technology, just like what we just mentioned about spanning tree, including this hot backup of routing. This is the technical application for the equipment. There is also a part of management. For example, we need to make plans to improve our process, including our management of information assets. We need this IT management system, IT asset management system. These are all management technologies. That is the strategies and control measures implemented, including both technology and management. We can understand it as management and technology. This is the second part. Then what about the third part? The key is to implement. That is when we have the equipment and technical support. The key is to rely on our entire staff to implement, including our security department, including our IT department, including our business execution department. That is the users. What should they all do? Conduct security awareness, education. The so-called security awareness education is that everyone must establish the same security awareness than a company. If your IT department or security department has high security awareness, but if our grassroots have no security awareness, there is still a problem. Here I can share a case. This case was a long time ago, about 10 years ago in a state-owned enterprise. A case we handled. This state-owned enterprise had an incident. It does design work, all its PCs have the same protection. For example, DLP is installed. Even the monitors are those special monitors. That is for example, your camera or mobile phone. When you take a picture of this screen, it is a white screen. Its refresh rate will have the same protection. Even so, a very important blueprint, a design blueprint was still leaked. In the end, we found the problem and the cause by reviewing the surveillance footage. We found actually what? Some employee leaked the blueprint through overtime, work leaked out. So you will find the biggest problem is still people. That is, we have installed a series of devices and a series of management measures. Actually, you still cannot completely avoid problems caused by people. So, in the whole process of information security management, people are actually the most important. The third thing is to raise security awareness. That is, in the execution process, how do we get everyone involved to focus on security, to have the same understanding? The fourth part, even if everyone's awareness has been raised, or our information security technology and management level has improved, we need to keep auditing. We need to check through auditing to verify and check whether we have really achieved it. Because sometimes it's subjective. I might not want to do it. And another is objective. I might not have done it. Or some things I can't achieve. Through auditing and checking, we will find some loopholes or areas for improvement. These areas for improvement will drive me in the next cycle to improve my security requirements or to manage the risks. I didn't discover some risks. For these risks, how do we respond? So it is a cyclical process. We can understand this as the PDCA of security. The word PDCA, those who have studied management know. It's called the Deming cycle. This PDCA is what we are talking about. First, we need to set clear goals and plans. We do according to this plan and goal. In the middle of the process, we need to check and verify. If we find a problem, we improve it through action or improve it again. So The management of security is still the same. There is no best, only better. Our security level or the benchmark is constantly improving. But there is a problem here. Even if our security is constantly improving or constantly adding more security or our technology, we still need to consider a very important detail. That is our funding needs, budget. This is called appropriate security in security. That is to say, when a company or organization invests in the security of the information system is equal to or slightly higher than the cost required for its security needs, then this is a virtuous or an excellent security design. That is to say, our security money is spent on the blade without overspending. If we blindly pursue new technologies or pursue more perfect, ideal security solutions, but our company actually doesn't need it, there is a logic here called security protection. The level that needs to be reached, I just need to follow my laws and regulations. Or industry standards, corresponding level. For example, we are level 2 protection, I reach the security cost of level 2 protection. Then it's okay. There is no need to say, I might be a small convenience store. I don't need to say, pursue an ultimate level 4 protection requirement. It's not necessary, maybe just need to meet. The corresponding industry standard is okay. So this is very important. There is another part. In the budget process, also need to consider our usual training. Some safety awareness education. We just mentioned it's still on the person. We might also have to do some necessary investment. So let's summarize here. When I'm designing a safe, this kind of information security management system, we have to consider safety at the beginning of the design. This sentence, we will talk about it in the future. When designing software, we will also mention many software designers, he doesn't consider safety at the beginning. He is more concerned about the functionality of my software and my business needs. Then I add safety to it or add it to my design requirements. Actually, this cost will be higher. So at the beginning of the design, I should consider again my information system. During the process of business requirements, I will incorporate safety requirements as part of the business requirements. Put it in. In this way, an organic integration is formed. Such business and security got another maximized application. In this way, its safety budget or cost is actually lower. You need to understand this concept. So in a company, we just talked about its design thinking. We also mentioned what exactly is this. Footfall safety. Here it involves and also need resources in place. The resources here usually refers to personnel. Let's take a look. For an organization, first of all, as a system and network administrator, that is what we call the network admin, or for example, DBA. This database admin, you will have an admin. Please note, this admin is considering security design or considering security architecture. He is just an executor. We can consider he is an operation and maintenance person. So, admin. Many times we will find, including myself, I have done operation and maintenance. I have also configured firewalls, configured routers, configured IDS. But you will find this is different from traditional security logic, because when I do configure, actually, I am just at the execution level. So, where are the security personnel? In what position? Let's continue to look down. This involves a strategy and compliance supervisor. We can understand it as CSO. So, from the perspective of security supervisor, or from the perspective of senior security, he is more about defining standards or process. That is what we say. In the process of your admin's operation, your configuration, whether it meets the security standards and requirements. You can't say it, right? For example, is your configured password long enough? When you make a corresponding policy, when we choose routing protocol, for example, when I choose routing protocol, I might choose RIP or OSPF or EGRP, which routing protocol to choose. This is related to our entire company and enterprise information security standards. For example, if we follow the requirements of level 3 protection, then we might choose OSPF and it's okay. But if we follow the requirements of level 4 protection, we might need to choose a faster convergence routing protocol. Its logic is different. So CSO needs to clarify our security standards and processes. This is the second task. Then the third task. You can see whether our admin or DBA meets this, or whether it works according to this security standard and process. Or to configure, we need to judge or need to verify it. This is the work of our security personnel, or the work of grassroots security personnel. So, security personnel, sometimes we say, for example, network security officer, often mixed with admin. Actually, the logic is different. That is security personnel. In fact, he understands the configuration or technical application of the system. He understands, but he won't do it, or usually won't do it. Instead, he is what? To see or verify whether our admin is compliant. So, the essence of security personnel. In fact, we can understand it as a compliance inspector. This in the process of project management. You can understand it as QC is quality control personnel. So, he is more about judging whether your admin's configuration is legal or whether it is compliant. I will give another example here. For example, I've been to a European multinational company. He has a branch in China. Then I visited his branch. I also met the head of his IT department. Then I asked them, I said, "Do you have a security department in China?" He said, "Yes. This security department only has one person. This person is a Chinese, but he was sent from Europe. It's equivalent to his organizational relationship not being in this local area of China." Then I understood why. That's very clear. So I understood why that's very obvious. It's me from the HR department. I'm not under your management in the China region at all. He himself came from Europe. It's like he's from the group's HR relationship. Then I will judge your IT in the China region. This whole big department, even a big park with tens of thousands of people, is your security work compliant? Only when his organization is independent. He can use a calm or an objective perspective to look at whether your work is done in place. So this is his logic. So the work of security personnel is compliance. What is the fourth one? Regardless of your standard process or the specific implementation in place. Just now, we mentioned compliance. Where is this compliance rule? Actually, everyone pay attention to this fourth character or the fourth element. It's the legal committee. This legal committee, many companies have it. You must look up to him. Actually, he represents the top management, the legal department. We talked about. Never underestimate the legal department. Actually, he represents the interests of the top management. Because it's like this. We need to know what the top management is. Actually, it's the ultimate responsibility. We often say legal person, this legal person. My personal understanding to facilitate everyone's memory. We can understand it as it's the law-abiding person. Once the company has a problem, when finally pursuing the legal responsibility of this organization, this legal person has to take responsibility. So, it's obviously the legal department is to ensure our top management or to ensure our board of directors is a core department. So, you can understand him as he represents the CEO. What are the legal requirements? So when we talk about this, we understand he is the one to execute. He is the rule setter. It's the CSO who sets the rules. He is doing the audit. Then all the work. He audits him. Then he executes his rules. And all these departments have to meet what we call the top management. That is the legal department. His compliance requirements. So this is in a company. The coordination and relationship between these resources. Everyone needs to understand. This is important in the exam. It's very important. If you work in this foreign company, you will be familiar. Actually, the exam we are facing. After all, it's an international certification. And his certification organization is from the United States. So we understand. It is, for example, the world's top 500 or international companies. Their understanding of safety, including what kind of personnel configuration. This is not immutable, including our security strategy, including this compliance requirements. It's not immutable. This involves two situations that may change. The first is the acquisition and merger of enterprises. Actually, acquisition and merger are obviously is the scale of the organization. Actually, these two are the same thing. It might be a split. It might be a merger. When my enterprise is split into several subsidiaries, or my enterprise merges into a bigger company. Let me give you an example. For example, like many state-owned enterprises and central enterprises in China. Now, all right? For example, like the power construction group or the energy construction group, it has merged into a larger one, right? This company, because in this way, the aggregation of advantageous resources. But you will find when I aggregate to a higher scale or a higher level or a higher industry, we say the leading enterprise. You will find that its security requirements are also going up because your enterprise scale, including your net profit assets, including the scale of personnel to a higher level, then the legal requirements that may be faced, including compliance requirements, may be higher. So the development of the organization will bring, we just mentioned that it is the change in compliance. It's this compliance requirement will also increase and improve. Then this improvement of our personnel, whose responsibility is it? In the end, everyone pay attention. From the execution level, it is full responsibility because it's all employees need to execute and implement our security responsibility. All employees need to consistently meet compliance requirements. So the role or responsibility of security should be all employees. But still that sentence, we just talked about it. So who is the ultimate responsibility? Obviously, it's the board of directors. It's like we produced a defective product. Actually, right? These defective products may have caused negative harm to society or was claimed. Then everyone is responsible in the end. The one who ultimately bears legal responsibility, actually it's the legal person because the board of directors, obviously he has decision-making power. He has a decision-making force. From this perspective, your decision, people below are executing. So the ultimate responsibility is definitely the board of directors. Then let's take a look. From a security perspective, our top management, for example, the CEO or the board of directors, the corresponding shareholders, what are their requirements? Firstly, setting the direction of strategy and tactics. This is very important. This is an extremely important step. That is our security strategy is formulated by the board of directors. Then some students may have a question. Then the security strategy you mentioned, Teacher Kui, it tends to be more technical or the protection of information, security. Our senior management, do they have this ability or do they have this technical strength to formulate the security strategy? Please note that we need to clarify one thing here. This security strategy is not like we imagined. It is actually a very general document. It can even be understood as it might just be a sentence. For example, our company, according to the scale of this company or industry characteristics, we must reach a certain level of protection. That might be the sentence. That is a company's security strategy or strategy. It is actually a compliance requirement. It might be a compliance requirement, a general definition. This is very important. And this compliance requirement, as we mentioned earlier, it must meet your business needs. For example, as we know about machine protection, many Chinese enterprises, protection of key technical facilities. If I am in these 7 industries, the requirements for machine protection, that would definitely be my security strategy. What is the main source? At the same time, my company scale. For example, if you are at the provincial level, that might be level 3 protection. If you are at the city level, it might be level 2 protection. Then, according to the scale of your company, it also determines your level requirements. So, this security strategy and security policy, it meets business needs. It is actually a requirement for compliance. And this strategy must be published and approved by the board of directors. This is also easy to understand. It is what we call a top-down project. This is also IT security. Why many companies can't implement it or why they don't do well. Often our IT department takes the lead in security or the entire information architecture department to do security. You will find it hard to promote because security itself and business are divergent. Everyone understands this the more secure you are. In fact, for business, it is inconvenient. For example, your password. Every month, you have to change it. And the password is very long. Everyone finds it inconvenient to use. So it must be led by senior management. It has to be from top to bottom, such a system architecture. Then we can execute it. This is another important point. That is, publication must be published in the name of the board of directors. It might be specifically written by, for example, our security department. I write this document for senior management, but the publication must be by senior management. This senior management, besides formulating strategy and publishing strategy, there's another very important one, that is, we need to understand what exactly our middle and grassroots level our departments are doing to implement security. Whether it meets what we just mentioned, this company's security strategy or policy requirements. So there's another one here called listening to reports. By listening to reports, through audit or listening to reports, we understand whether the people below have achieved it. So this board of directors, what he cares about. In fact, to sum it up, it's two things. One is what? One is setting strategy. The other is listening to reports. These are the requirements of the board of directors. Then everyone understands. This is because the board of directors is the ultimate responsibility. I have to clarify a direction and goal. At the same time, how the enemy is doing, I need to understand. Then the specific security strategy. As we mentioned earlier, it is a very general, a formal statement is for the entire organization. Everyone must comply with a statement of rules. So it is extremely general, as we mentioned earlier. Then we follow level 3, protection for our company, make the corresponding security requirements. Actually, inside this level 3 protection, the specific details inside or the way of technical implementation, senior management does not care. But for level 3 protection, and what it benchmarks our industry or the requirements of this scale, he is, as our senior management, must understand. So this is the first one. As the senior management of a company, we clarify his responsibility. Then the second part, let's take a look. That is the security supervisor, CSO. Actually, CSO. Everyone understands what he cares more about. He is also a senior executive, but he is more concerned about the safety part. So the CSO has the responsibility to ensure all information assets are free from losses caused by negligence, leakage, alteration, damage. This is what we just mentioned. CIA confidentiality, integrity and controllability, and other unavailable states. That is, our CSO actually protects the CIA of information assets. How to protect specifically. We also mentioned just now, then he comes up with more detailed, for example, action plans, including what we just mentioned. He comes up with some baselines, or this equivalent standard, how to do it specifically. Some more detailed requirements is led by the CSO. Then we just mentioned, then we followed the level 3 protection, the specific details of level 3 protection. He targets management, he targets passwords, he targets the requirements of this computer room, he targets system requirements, he targets business, right? Software requirements. So these baselines are clarified by the CSO, so it's clear. So the responsibility of the information security supervisor, he mainly clarifies specific details. And another one, he has to report to the CEO. We were talking about senior executives just now. He has to listen to the report, right? Where does your report come from? Obviously, our CSO has to go up, has to report to the CEO. At the same time, not only to report to the CEO actually, we also mentioned just now, also has to report to our legal department, including, right, many companies' IT departments or the security department. He is under finance. That is what we call the finance department, especially like those Japanese and Korean enterprises, because we used to, once for Japanese and Korean enterprises, did relatively secure compliance requirements. So I have experienced some Japanese enterprises. Basically, he calls the computer department are under finance. So this CISO has to report to his direct supervisor and the CEO, because you have to report to the senior executives, because the senior executives have to bear the heaviest responsibility. He has to understand. Okay, this is the main responsibility of the security supervisor. One is to clarify the specific management of security, some details. At the same time, he also has to report to the senior executives. Then the question comes again. Just now we mentioned then, I'm deploying specific security work or some detailed requirements. Are there any reference architectures? The book gives us 4 architectures. The first one is called COSO, Just know about it, the content of this part. We will elaborate in the future. COSO. Actually, it's for financial statements. COSO is actually called Internal Control Integrated Framework. Just know about it. He won't test this specific framework's name. That is, it's internationally common a new system audit standard. You can understand it as it's to prevent internal, for example, fraud, like some falsehoods in financial statements, how to protect from the new system. You have to also need to make corresponding ARITE, Information Security Report. The second one is ITIL. Everyone knows this, right? This is an IT operation, focuses on end-to-end operation framework. The third one is COBIT. COBIT is also a big framework. This one is an IT audit framework. Then some students will have a question. Then what's the difference between your IT operation and IT audit framework? What's the difference? IT operation actually mainly revolves around, for example, we said this co-center, like this event handling, this problem solving, steps to upgrade the problem. He is more concerned about targeting end user business issues. How do I digest and handle and the IT audit framework? He is more about this IT governance, that is the planning of your entire IT department. Construction and corresponding control points. Is there any corresponding? Did a good job of corresponding risk work. This is more popular. COBIT. If you're interested, for COBIT, there is a certification called CISSP. Many students should have heard of it. The Big Four used to take it more. You know, the Big Four audit firms, they take COBIT. That is, more people take CISSP. It is a framework for IT audit. Then the last one, called ISO's 27000 framework. This 27000 framework. Actually, it's for information security management. This is a framework for information security management. That is how our information system is built. And after it is built, then how to evaluate whether it meets the business requirements. Actually, ISO's 27000. ISO 27000 had a revision in 2013. Then in 2022, that is, in 2022, it has a new version. If you are interested, you can take a look. Because of ISO 27000, it is actually my safety management, or the entire design of safety, or in planning a framework often used. 2 points that senior management needs to pay attention to. One is moderate attention. One is moderate diligence. What is the so-called moderate attention? That is, as a business owner or senior management, it must do its best to manage and prevent safety risks. This duty or the corresponding work. For example, a company. If you don't spend money, not on these fire and theft prevention measures, if there are some actions, then a fire might happen. Then shareholders and the corresponding main middle layers are responsible for management. For example, like employees, customers, or shareholders may sue the company. Then the middle layer and main management, they will bear some legal responsibility. That is to say, moderate attention. Actually, it is what we say. We need senior management to understand some legal responsibilities, and for this need to do some legal learning. That is, we need to know, as for the safety of information assets, may involve some legal and regulatory requirements. In this regard, then the second one, called moderate diligence. That is, even if our senior management understands some risks of laws and regulations, then you have to achieve compliance in the entire execution process. Need to meet or achieve compliance. This is moderate diligence. So, what is moderate diligence? You can see that this sentence is very important. He implemented the management activities of moderate attention, the so-called moderate diligence. For example, we need to do background checks for security staff. Then we regularly need to do risk assessments, and corresponding audit work need to verify our new system, whether it meets the requirements of compliance, including our employees, whether they meet the requirements for security positions, and what risks or threats we have in our daily maintenance. This is moderate diligence. The simplest example, we can remember it this way. In moderate attention, he mainly looks at it, need to understand, and moderate diligence, mainly to do or supervise the implementation. So these two aspects, that is moderate diligence and moderate attention, and these two aspects in our textbook, he gave a particularly good Such a conceptual definition, called the prudent man principle, I particularly appreciate this word. Then as a prudent person, that is, our senior management, when dealing with new system business or when doing this corresponding safety work, need to maintain a more cautious or prudent attitude. For example, our security strategy, whether it has been effectively implemented, then our employees, whether his ability meets the corresponding requirements, whether the corresponding review has been done, including whether we do audits in the daily process, and situation awareness, intelligence collection, this including the protection of the company's intellectual property. These all belong to a prudent attitude. So it is what we say, maintain a reverence or a prudent attitude towards the world. Then we can possibly do a good job. Then we can possibly do the job well.